in my phone.
Court is in session with Ryan in Sacktown on If You Don't Like That. Now, Ryan in Sacktown.
Oh, must be Rhino.
Give me a hell yeah!
Hell yeah! It is Kings Game Week. What's going on? Happy Monday. I'm a little nervous to ask the question, how was your weekend? How was your weekend? It was a big weekend in sports. It's a weekend for the Kings. Let's go. What's up, Dennis? How you doing, my man? Acknowledge
me
as the first person in the house today. Dennis, I know your weekend wasn't great. I know it wasn't. We're going to talk about it. We got to talk about it. But welcome into the Kings Court on a Monday. We made it. It is the regular season, and Court is officially in session. Kings basketball 3 sleeps away, and it's going to be the Kings and the Timberwolves. We'll get a chance to check out the Timberwolves as they open up in LA a couple of nights before. Tomorrow night they open up in LA, so they get their first game under their belts. But we've got plenty on the Kings. If you were with us at the end of the show on Friday, we got some audio from practice that completely changed my view in some ways of the preseason, especially the offense for the Kings. And so we're going to go over all that. Also, we're going to talk some Doug McDermott. We've got some audio from him as well. We'll talk Kings. We're going to start football, though. If you want to get in on the conversation, this is usually a call to action for Corn Dog. Corn Dog, now is your time, because we're only going an hour today, and that's because Grant and I are going to be back at 4 o'clock, getting you ready for Monday Night Football. Also, we'll be talking the weekend football action. A lot went down between college and pro. Did you watch the Texas-Georgia game? Texas-Georgia, yes, that was a little bit anticlimactic when it came to the game itself, but the game within the game was actually very notable. You probably know what I'm talking about. We'll get to that here in a little bit. Yeah, Dennis is breaking the news there about Brandon Ayuk. Yeah, that Dennis, my man, this Niners thing, and we're going to talk about it more in a second, went from Super Bowl or bust to will this team make the playoffs? That's where it's at right now. It's not trending the right way. It's not. And I'm not here to pile on, Niners fan. I'm not. I really hope that you guys, and this is coming from a Seattle Seahawks fan, I hope you can get it figured out, because the NFL is better when the Niners are good and playing well. The division is better. Everything as a whole is better, but this has just been a complete carryover from the offseason and the preseason. Nothing has changed. Nothing. In fact, it's getting worse. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. We're brought to you today by Bennett's West Side Grill in Rockland. Make sure you go to bennettsrestaurants.com. Check out all their locations. Did you catch brunch this weekend? Like I told you, go check the brunch out. Prime rib, did you hit that? Got to hit some prime rib and some horseradish. Or if you're Aaron Rodgers, maybe prime rib, horseradish, and a booger. Don't act like everybody here hasn't at some time, either purposely or not on purpose, tried a booger. It's happened before. Now on national TV, that's a little bit of a different story. when you get your new toy, Devontae Adams, and it ain't going so well, you probably got to think those cameras are focused in on you pretty hard. But like I said, 4 o'clock, and by the way, get to Bennett'sRestaurants.com. 4 o'clock, Grant and I will be here. This is kickoff week for this channel. This is where we shift into high gear. If you didn't see Grant's video that he put out this morning, go check that out. It's on X. I believe it's on Instagram as well. Get you fired up for the season. We have got big stuff going. The channel is changing a little bit. We're going to be implementing some of the updates. You notice the graphics here on the King's Court have updated a little bit. We're going to be doing that across the board, in addition to some other means of interaction with all of you. And as always, we're here pregame. I'll be kicking off the pregame. And that's what's going to get a little bit different really quick about the King's Court, because depending on the King's schedule, there might not be room for the King's Court. So we're looking at how we're going to fit that in, and it will still be here. We'll still be doing it, but some King's Courts will actually be the King's Court pregame show with Rhino. So we'll get into that all in a little bit. But yeah, if you want to call the show now. I'll put the link back into the chat as well. Plenty to talk about. Only an hour to get it in. I've got a ton of Kings audio that I want to get in because I think it's really important. Let's hit the chat really quick before to our first take. And in fact, we've already got people lining up on the calls. Dennis, man. By the way, do we need to cancel the haunted horse segment on Fridays? Like, I think maybe I can carry that one on my own, because both of his picks were dead wrong. Wrong. I told him the Niners were going to get smashed outright. I told him the Seahawks were going to smash the Falcons. Both things happened. Zakara, is he really killing you that bad? He wasn't helping you really that much. And yes, all reports indicate that it is a torn ACL. Not the only notable injury this weekend. It looks like Jaden Daniels is going to escape any significant time with his ribs. But what about the Deshaun Watson situation and the Deshaun Watson injury? You know who I feel for in that situation? I feel for Cleveland fans in this sense. They weren't asked to be put in the position to where either that guy is still going to be on the field, whether you agree with the way he's playing or you disagree with what's going on off the field with him, he's still going to be on there unless an injury happens. Now, you should never cheer somebody for getting hurt. Ever. You should never throw things on the field. Ever. But in some cases, did both fan bases get awarded or rewarded for bad behavior? Maybe. We'll talk about it some more. Let's go to the phones really quick. I knew this guy was going to come in. He's got a lot to talk about, and that will merge into probably some of my college football talk. Corn Dizzy, what's up, dude?
Yeah, you know what? You started it with throwing things on the field. What was that, Texas?
Corn Dog, here's my take. That play does not get overturned if the students aren't throwing stuff on the field.
Agreed. 200% agreed.
That's the first thing. The second thing to me is it's a non-subject, and I agree with you. You don't throw shit on the field. That should not happen, period, end of story. But if the refs would have flagged Texas 15 yards, this is not a conversation. They got the call wrong. They fixed the call, and you flag Texas 15 for the fans throwing stuff on the field. It's done with. But again, that was wild. What'd you make of all that in the game?
It's basically, rewarding the kid for throwing a tantrum at the supermarket for not getting a Snickers bar, because now they're going to be incentivized to try it again. That's simple as that. Kirby Smart hit the nail on the coffin at his postgame. Yeah, that's exactly what you did. He cried. They cried. They got the Snickers bar out of it, and now they're going to do it again. It's just like, with your dogs or whatever. If you feed them at the table, they're going to keep coming back.
It's a damn good point, dude. I don't know. I mean, that was bad. It wasn't just a couple things that were on the field. The entire end zone was littered. Probably the red zone, I would say. Call it the garbage zone now,
Yeah, it was not acceptable. It was just terrible, and I wouldn't even care if the Kings were losing by 60. I'm not doing that.
Yeah, there's no place for it. None whatsoever. But I thought the game overall was really anticlimactic. Georgia dominated. I thought after that happened, the way that Georgia came back and kind of took control of the game was really impressive. Bad night for Texas's offense, Sark, and man, that would have been a huge one for them to get on their home field.
Yeah, the offense did their defense no favors at all. Their defense was starting, but behind their own 50 plenty of times. Hell, even at their own like 20-yard line with that Ewers fumble. Like their defense is pretty good. They were able to get some turnovers off Beck, but their offense did them no favors. And the Dogs, they were off the leash and they attacked.
They did indeed. Oregon, number one. I don't see Oregon as a legit number one.
We'll find out. They actually have a pretty good matchup coming up against Illinois, who no slouch of a team. By the way, they're coming off of that Michigan win. And did you see their uniforms?
Those were solid. Did you hear what went into those helmets, by the way?
Yeah, it was like a 2-year process, like this whole uniform design and like the whole paint. Like it took like hours and stuff just for one.
Yeah, they said it was 2 hours to make each helmet. But like you said, the process of putting those uniforms and helmets together and designing them, 2 years to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the rededication of Indiana's stadium. Or in Illinois, excuse me.
Yeah, fabulous job. Like 10 out of 10. Like thank you for actually properly planning a proper 100th anniversary uniform. Like that is like one of the best uniforms I've seen in a long time. It had that old school stride, and the helmets just looked almost like leather. Like,
you're spot on, man. How does a college program get that so right, yet every NFL team, for the most part, that does these celebration jerseys, they're so wrong. They're offensive. They're putrid.
Yeah, no, they're not good at all. That's the one thing I love about college. There's just a little more passion there in some instances that you just don't get in the NFL. Not saying there aren't passionate NFL fans. I know Raider fans are as passionate as can be, but there's just a little bit more with college football.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. That's something that I hope with the landscape changing around college football and NIL and whatever's going to happen with the NCAA, I hope that's the one thing that never changes. Because Tennessee this weekend, seeing that atmosphere, incredible.
Yeah, well, the state of Tennessee is 2-0 versus Alabama for the first time in forever.
Yeah, that's a good point. Strong point by you, my man. Okay, you got 30 seconds to run down anything else that hopped out at you from the college game.
Indiana's damn good.
So you're a believer, huh?
That was a solid Nebraska team that they put like 50 on.
And game day, I guess, is headed to Indiana now here in the next couple weeks. Yeah.
But you know what? The actual game to watch this week will be Notre Dame at Navy.
You know what? It's a good point. Navy's putting up a ton of points. Those Army.
Hey, and you know what? Navy beat a pretty good Memphis team that still only losses to Navy. Navy's no slouch. Army's no slouch. This is a great year. Vandy is not a slouch. Like, I never thought I'd live to see all three of those ranked at the same year.
Yeah, it's been wild for sure. And I expect it to continue as well. It'll be interesting when the first rankings come out in November.
This is probably Navy's probably true test. And this is Notre Dame's first test since the A&M game, really. I mean, yeah, they lost to NIU, but this is like a true test.
So really quick, we'll get you out on Dennis's question. What's your read on the Heisman situation?
Yeah, I don't see how it's going to anyone else besides Travis Hunter or Ashton Jeanty. Cam Ward's playing good, but I mean, Ashton Jeanty is, on pace to break Barry Sanders' record, which again, we've had a lot of Heisman running backs since then, and they still haven't touched it. Like like through the same amount of games, he's like ahead of Reggie Bush, way ahead of Derrick Henry, way ahead of Mark Ingram's Heisman campaigns. And these are, some of the best college running backs that we've ever seen. Like, we're talking like next level player right here. And you know what? Considering how well he played against Oregon, and Oregon did pretty good against the two-headed monster against Ohio State, I would say, that this kid is legit. I don't care what conference he's in. He would do the same thing to any conference.
Yeah. Okay. So let me give you just a little grain of salt. It's the conference. And I know you just hit on that. It's who they're playing. Like, you're going to have detractors, especially on the national base, say, well, you did it against Portland State, you did it against Washington State, Utah State, Hawaii, UNLV, right? And I know they played Oregon, but that's going to matter. Like, Cam Ward, the machine behind some of these bigger names, means a little bit more, and winning goes into it too. Winning absolutely figures into it. And granted, Colorado, if we're going to talk about Travis Hunter, on the flip side, they're winning football games right now.
Yeah, they are winning football. The fact that this coincided perfectly with, we haven't heard a lot from Deion lately, and now they started winning, makes me think that he's actually focusing on football and not just being, a celebrity, which has actually helped the program a lot because, again, Deion being Deion will attract talent regardless. He's a bigger brand than even, let's say, almost a Texas University, like, because how big of a name he is and a celebrity he is. So he can attract a lot of those talent. Like, again, Travis Hunter is a great example. They fixed a lot of things. And yeah, now that he's more focused on being a winner and not a loudmouth and keeping receipts and whatnot, and actually putting effort onto the field, you actually get results.
Yeah, we'll see if it holds up. I mean, I hope so, because I've slammed him.
But then also, though, a little benefit this team had from last year's team is the Big 12 is not as strong as the Pac-12 was.
Yeah, it's a good point.
That's because, I mean, if they had to play Oregon right now, Oregon's going to stomp them.
Yeah, they'd get.
Just like last year, it'd be the same.
100%. It's a great point. Excellent point. Good job, dude.
Yeah, I can't wait for 4:00.
Yeah, get in here. Grant will want to hear from you. I don't disagree with you, Dennis. I'm just saying these bigger schools have a bigger marketing machine behind them, and the Heisman is as much about marketing as it is on field play. I mean,
the whole commercial, the Heisman House.
Yes, so you gotta keep that in mind. But all right, dude, we'll see you at 4:00. Appreciate you.
All right.
Good call by Corn Dog. From Corn Dog, we kick it to Gammon. Welcome into the King Square, buddy. No audio, Gammon. I can't hear you.
How about now?
Got you now. There you
All
go.
right. I feel like I was just in a misstep, just like the 49ers were this past Sunday. So cue on to them. Not really surprised what's going on with the 49ers whatsoever right now. Look, anybody who has watched this team knew that they should have been investing more capital in the trenches. And we're talking about on the offensive side. When we lost Alex Mack, the center that we got from the Falcons, who was just a Pro Bowl center, and then we tried to replace him with a guy, Jake Brendel, who was really just an undrafted free agent, kind of like a walk-on, a walk-off, really, if you will, I believe, from the Steelers. He's done well, definitely a smart player, but you just watch him. Every game, there's 2 or 3 times where he gets put on his butt or just absolutely uplifted and then pushed into the backfield. And I like Brock Purdy. He reminds me a lot of Drew Brees. They played in wildly different systems. But the thing they did with Drew Brees was that they put this great offensive line around him, and then that allowed him to just start picking teams apart. Yeah. If he's not having to think about where he needs to go with his feet, and then he can just think about where he needs to go with his arm, it's a big difference. But I would put this on John Lynch for, first of all, stating that he said when he took over the team that he was going to develop this team inside and out within the trenches. And I have not seen that. I'm seeing a guy like Bosa all alone, who, let's be honest, they lucked into that. I'm seeing a guy like Trent Williams, who's all alone on that offensive line. We're the
Well,
bullies.
defensive, there's been some injuries, right? They're waiting for certain guys to come back. Now, does that make a huge difference? Maybe not, because you're spot on about Kyle Shanahan, too. He has never been one to invest in the trenches, especially on the offensive line. And you look at the Chiefs, that's what they have made a living out of. And look at the results. It's dramatically different. And this Niners team too, they can't play from behind. And to use your comparison to Drew Brees, for me, Brock Purdy is not terrible with his legs. Now, he's not Jaden Daniels, he's not Lamar Jackson. You don't want him running the ball a ton, but with the type of offense you're running and the fact that he's a smart enough quarterback and enough of a threat to possibly take off, where's more RPO action? Like, make him be a threat, and I just don't see it. So you there?
Yes, no, I'm here. Absolutely, I agree with all those points. Again, there's a couple things that are going to happen within a football season, right? Injuries are going to happen. It's a physical game. Inclement weather is going to happen as well. We're not mutters, right? We don't play well in the rain. And then also too, you have a guy, and not to call it our head coach, but he says, he doesn't do the wet ball practice at all, where you just dunk the balls in a tank full of water, and then get your quarterback acclimated to throwing a heavier, wetter, slippery ball, which is the same thing for your quarterbacks. And it's just you're just watching all these things where they get allocated. Also, too, the big thing in the offseason was a lot of the fans were asking, hey, 49ers, what are you guys doing as far as your preparation for special teams? And time again, they told us not to worry about it, not to worry about it. And if I were to ask any 49ers fan, where would you rank us as far as special teams, unit? And they said that we were in the bottom 5. I don't think that would be dismissible. I think that's just kind of fact.
Gammon, I'm surprised your special teams coach still has a job right now. I really am. You can't put it directly on the kicker. The special teams coach does not sign the kicker, so I give that a little bit of leniency. But the 44-yard return, the different mistakes, the way that special teams has cost this team this year has been vastly. And I don't know. You have to answer the question for me, and the chat can answer it, because I'm not a huge Niners guy. I don't pay attention, watch their games every second, but it seems like those mistakes special teams are making, the football team, because of injuries, because the lack of complementary football, is not able to make up for those mistakes. And maybe the mistakes are right along the same lines as they have been the last couple of years. You just had a better team around it, but this year it's sticking out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, and it's bad. It's even worse than a sore thumb. It's really bad. And again, the injury excuse, I'm not giving this team that anymore, because they've had all those years to work within a specific system. Look, I've seen Rick Adelman. I remember when Chris Webber went down, and even Mike Bibby went down, and then you saw guys like Peja Stojakovic almost have an MVP season in spite of that. You watched a guy like Bobby Jackson that made you scratch your head and go like, I don't know, do we need Mike Bibby? Who's really the better starting point guard on this team? But that is your job to manage that, especially with this team as much draft capital in the mid rounds as they've had. They've had several misses in the third round, to where in my mind it's inexcusable. So I have to put that on the dynamic duo of John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. Not saying they're not doing a terrific, amazing job. I think the proof is in the pudding. 3 Super Bowls in the time they've had. But when you're looking at why they haven't punched it in, it's a little bit different than versus the 2000 Kings, while they weren't able to punch it in and get that championship. It's just a lot of self-hurt right there. And also too, at any point in time with all these first round picks, I love the story about Purcell. I really do. Robbie, I really do. But you can't convince me. And I would say this to his face, because I think he's going to be an amazing player, an amazing talent. I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Fame player, or even a Pro Bowler. His perseverance is amazing, but there's no way you could tell me we shouldn't have taken a center in the late first round or a tackle. I'm starting to miss McGlinchey.
Yeah.
I'm at the point right now. I'm literally starting to miss McGlinchey. I'm watching McGlinchey and the Broncos, and I'm going like, maybe if you can't pass block, at least you can run block. But I'm starting to feel absolutely a certain way. I really do appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Just kind of
appreciate it,
rambling.
Gannon. Good take, brother. Yeah, a lot of meat still left on that 49ers bone, and it'll be interesting to see. They play Dallas this week, Sunday Night Football. Dallas coming off of the bye. What this is going to look like? So if the Niners lose this one, you're on the road for 3 weeks.
We're not on the
Or
road.
you have a bye, and then you're on the road.
The other word I would use is we're on the ropes if we're not already there already at 3 and 4. And this last thing, because I don't think I'll be able to call back in later, but I would be curious if you could pose this question, maybe frame it better than I am to you right now, but maybe to Grant.
Yeah.
But what I don't like seeing is I don't like seeing the players having to answer coach type questions. Like I watched George Kittle answering questions that really felt like should have been answered by Kyle Shanahan. And there was like a year or two before where I really felt like Fred Warner was answering questions that really Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch should have been answering. And I don't really remember Kings players, like personally, maybe as a team, yes, but not so much like, I don't know, kind of hard to explain, and that's why I'm having a hard time framing it. But it seems like these 49ers players are having to answer questions that a player shouldn't be answering. And I know that's something where you and Grant would have to have been watching, what do you call it, the press conferences?
Yeah.
But it's starting to, I don't know what year we're in with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Are we in when they take over? I want to say we're like
2017.
We're at least like 7 or 8 years in, right? I think so, somewhere in there. We'll say 6 to 8 just to kind of give us some leniency. But I don't know. Something's not sitting right with me. This is starting to feel like the 2020 season when we lost that Super Bowl. Guys were injured. It feels like it's physical and mental health. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Good call, Gammon. Good job by you. This Niners situation, again, I think Niners fans are lying to themselves if you didn't see this coming to a degree with the preseason that you had, the injuries, the question marks, the inconsistencies, the holdouts. To think that just because you flip it over and it's no longer preseason, it's now called regular season, and all that's going to stop, it's not the case, especially with football. Now, you can't, there's similarities, but you cannot compare the preseason in basketball to the preseason in football. Not even close. Football is much longer, training camps longer, you've got OTAs, all that stuff, but you saw the writing on the wall. That was the hard thing. And as for Kyle Shanahan, as an outsider looking in, it seems like there's a stubbornness about this guy. Like Jacob Cowling, he just starts getting reps in the last couple weeks because Shanahan didn't trust him? When you've got Ronnie Bell, who made another possible big mistake, looked like he ran the wrong route this week. He's had drops. But because you trust that guy more, like it just feels like Shanahan's got a way about doing things, and there's nothing that you're going to do about it to change it. So, and quite frankly, with this team showing the incapability to play from behind and having a coach that has shown the capability to lose big leads, what's the sweet spot for this team? And again, Niners fans, I want this to get better for you. But at this point, you could even start asking, should the Niners be buying or selling at the trade deadline, which is less than 2 weeks away? It's a tough situation in San Francisco right now. Here's the thing. I've said this for years in the Shanahan era. For years. The Niners are like the nicest, most expensive sports car you can buy. Fastest car on the street. Everybody's rubbernecking as you drive by, right? But if a little bolt is loose, if a fluid level is not perfectly right, then that car doesn't run right. And it's expensive as hell to maintain. But damn it, when that car is running right, watch the hell out. You can be the best. But hey, this Chiefs team, we can talk about Patrick Mahomes. He had his worst passer rating of his career yesterday. Worst. When I've got to hear from this guy, Jerry Rice, when it's the guy that's the has-been, that's doing Skechers commercials, that's wearing big-ass chains on the sidelines, begging for attention, when Jerry Rice is calling out the team and saying they are not playing to the San Francisco standard, and I'm paraphrasing there, that shit wouldn't fly with the Niners back in the day, man, something's wrong if I'm agreeing with Jerry Rice. Holy crap. Anyways, thank you, Gammon. Thank you, Sea-Dog, for kicking us off with a couple of good calls. In fact, we only got 28 minutes left in the show. I definitely want to get some Kings in. Looking through the chats, I'll continue putting your chats on the screen as the show goes along and we get into some Kings sound bites. But first, don't forget about Bennett's. Yes, that's the West Side Grill. That's the one in Rockland, located in the Blue Oaks Town Center. And they are proudly sponsoring today's episode of the King's Court. Do me a favor, go to bennettsrestaurants.com. You can learn more about all of their locations, 3 in the greater Sacramento area. Talk all the time about their incredible offerings. But get this, now you can order online at bennettsrestaurants.com from the ease of your house, right there on the computer. You don't even got to pick up the phone. You could get the redfish, the New York strip, whatever it is, you can do it right there. Don't forget about their incredible specials. Like I said, hopefully you made it out for brunch this last weekend. If not, all good. You got happy hour today, 2 to 6, sips and tastes. Also, wine and dine Monday, 2 entrees, bottle of wine, under $70. What I'm telling you, get to bennettsrestaurants.com and check everything out. You will not be disappointed. Bring your damn appetite, and it will not rock your wallet. I promise you that. Prime cuts of seafood and steak. Huge thanks to Bennett's for sponsoring today's episode of the King's Court. That is bennettsrestaurants.com. All right, we went phone call heavy, which I am totally good with. So let's transfer to here because we've talked about Texas. I wanted to get to that. We've talked Niners. We've got to that, and I'll continue getting your chats up. But let's talk Kings. They open up Thursday night. They've had a little bit of a break. FanFest was last night. Not sure if anybody made it out to that, but a lot of concern from the fan base coming out of the preseason, especially the preseason games. Kind of reminded you, there's a lot that happens behind the scenes. The practices are sometimes more important, if not as important, well, definitely as important, but sometimes more important than what you see in the preseason games. And a lot of questions about the offense, a ton about shot making, a ton about turnovers. And, I pointed to the things that the Kings had been doing right, the things that were points of emphasis that Coach Brown wanted to really hammer home during training camp. But I'd be lying to you if I said there wasn't part of me that was like, all right, well, we brought DeMar DeRozan in to kind of break up those runs. And if you weren't with us on Friday, it's runs like this that happened in the preseason with the starters on the floor that gave Kings fans PTSD from last season, the season before. Midway through the first quarter, the Kings go turnover. They go turnover, missed 3, missed 2, end of quarter. Then you get free throws, missed 2. Then you go Offensive rebound. So you miss 2 more shots, you get an offensive rebound, you get free throws, you go turnover, 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 and then finally, you get a bucket, you get a field goal. How many possessions was that without a field goal? A lot, too many in today's NBA. And that's what we thought DeMar DeRozan was being brought in for, right? The other questions, what are the Kings going to do with the next 7 days? Well, now it's 4 days, 3.5 days before the Timberwolves come in. How is Mike Brown going to utilize that? Well, Friday at practice, Coach Brown dropped something that completely caught me off guard. I had not heard this from any of my sources or anyone inside the building, and it really put the offense into perspective. Now, the turnovers, there's no excuse, especially that last game against the Clippers. Bad decisions from guys that play too many important minutes for this team to make. You can't make those. Domas, terrible decisions at time in that game. But in the preseason prior to that, the Kings had actually played pretty well when it came to turnovers, especially when the starters were on the court. So Coach Brown, and first off, before we get to what Coach Brown said that really put things into perspective, and I think will calm you as well, I want to let you know, obviously, the Kings had their cut downs or started that process Friday. We went over those in detail, so Coach had a few words about the guys that were cut. Here's Coach Brown.
Everybody, in my opinion, helped each other get better. So, I want to thank all those guys, Broderick, Terry, Boogie. They were very, very good for us. And, I think they all have an opportunity, in my opinion, to play, if not in the NBA right now, for sure in the G League.
So, kind words from Coach Brown about some of the cuts. We're going to go into those because we don't have a ton of time. We've already hit them hard last week on Friday. Go check out the King's Court on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts, and we talk about it more there. But as to the offense, this blew my mind. And you can hear the media that was there go, oh, like it blew their mind too. This was Coach Brown on the execution and the coaching. What he said they could do and what they couldn't do in the preseason. Coach Brown.
In our players' defense, I've only allowed them really to play out of our flow. And so, we're not going specifically to this guy or that guy, or we're not, if a team is blitzing or if a team is switching, we're trying to see if we can still score or attack at whatever defense we face. And we did a decent job at it at times, but it puts them in a predicament because at times it's hard and they're just kind of pound away at something that they're not used to, but I'm hoping that they can get used to it. So when we do play in flow during the game, while mixing in our other actions, it's easy, a lot easier to do in the future. So part of it's our fault, but then part of it's their fault in terms of taking too many chances on the turnover. So the biggest thing that I saw last night in the 2 games before is our turnover. And that has hurt us on both ends of the floor because it's given our opponent easy baskets and confidence, and it's taken us away from shooting the ball at the rim.
Blew my mind. Blew my freaking mind. But makes all the sense in the world. If you've ever been on a basketball team, if you've ever played competitively, there's all these different situations and drills that coaches will put you through in practice. For instance, you can only take 2 dribbles. You have to make 5 passes before you shoot, things like that. And the fact that Coach Brown made the team grind through their free looks, the free flow offense, to try to find a look within that. Now, it wasn't pretty, but the fact that I understand they were partially handcuffed, their decision-making was not completely their own. They could not play a full deck of cards. And I said all preseason, you're not going to see a full deck of cards from Coach Brown. You're not going to show what you're going to do in the regular season. You're not going to run your sets, anything like that. But yes, That run that I just ran off a few minutes ago, I was troubled by it because nobody stopped it, right? Here's the Kings shot chart opening night of the preseason. This is what it looked like the first half when the Kings led 68-66 going into the half against the Warriors from the G1C. It's a pretty damn good shot chart. And look at how different it is from last year. A lot of stuff inside, a lot of stuff outside, or not that much stuff outside, I should say. So I was pleasantly surprised by Coach Brown's comments. The fact that there's going to be more structure, that is huge. That is absolutely huge for this team. And a question you legitimately had to ask yourself. Will there be any structure? Because last year there wasn't. So what's up, Lids? Yeah, Lids wants a rim protector. She's wanted that for more than a season. I can tell you that much. So speaking of offense, that's not just the only side of the ball that you play. There's also the defensive side of the ball. De'Aaron Fox was asked what the Kings need to improve on over the next 5-6 days and work on. Here's what De'Aaron had to say.
I mean, obviously, you want to win every single game.
Oh, excuse me. This was on the preseason.
But, I mean, talk about the first two, we had the lead, and going in the half and even going into the third quarter. And then obviously we don't play in the fourth quarter, the guys who usually finish the game. So you don't look at it in that aspect. But I've also been a part of a team that's gone 4-0. And then I think we went 2-8, starting the season. So, I mean, obviously going into the preseason, you want to play the right way. But at the end of the day, you can't really look at the wins and losses because it's not really, it's not the same.
So De'Aaron on the preseason process and the results, do not disagree with you. He also talked about the defense, where that needed to improve. And he talked about his contract situation, which we covered last week. In fact, we covered in June. It was no news if you've been watching the Kings Court. But he was asked a couple questions. What's going to be different? Like, how do you play different? What are you looking for in this team to make all NBA? Kid wants to win. Can't ask for anything more than that. So again, back to Coach Brown asking how the next few days are going to be used. What's that going to look like? Here's what Coach Brown had to say.
Just want to be smart managing the guys. Today we had a non-contact practice for everybody. It wasn't long. We just, had some muscle memory stuff, but we also added some stuff because now we want to add some stuff that we did last year that was good to help alleviate some of the pressure of what we're facing defensively. And so these next 6 days we'll add some familiar stuff for the most part. Get reps with that. We'll tighten up some things on the defense end of the floor. One of these days we'll scrimmage. We're going to give them tomorrow off. Another day will just be a shooting day. And then hopefully we'll have a couple of good practices around that.
And then remember, too, this was recorded on Friday, so they had Saturday off. They had Fan Fest yesterday. They're back at practice today. A lot of talk, too, about Doug McDermott. Remember, he played a decent amount of minutes in the last preseason game. He played 25 minutes. He didn't play bad. In fact, his three-point percentage for somebody that had not played any preseason games in the NBA or had been in camp was pretty darn good. Doug was a little bit surprised to play that amount of minutes, but Coach Brown offered some inflections and some theories as to what Doug may open up for the rest of the guys and how the rest of the guys may open Doug up. And he related this too a little bit to Kevin Huerter, which I thought is actually right in line. So here's Coach Brown.
I think he's going to get easier looks, and which is going to be very good for us. And if he doesn't get easier looks, that means they're guarding him like that, which is creating more space for the rest of our guys. So he knows what his job is, and he did it well. The last thing I would say about it is you can see, I'm not saying he's Usain Bolt out there, but you can see when he moves with a pace. And the gravity that he has when he's on the floor. Like as soon as he steps in, hey, hot, you got to guard. And then anytime he's moving, he's kind of getting everybody leaning in that direction. And so that in itself can cause the defense to make some mistakes, which will make it easier for everybody else.
And Doug does have a green light. That has been confirmed. Coach Brown, much like Kevin Huerter, he's that established of a shooter. He gets a green light. Now, a lot of questions around what made Doug join the Kings, what his role would be, and a lot of talk about whether or not Doug is the right fit for this team. I really liked what Doug had to say, and I really like where his head's at in terms of his role. Here's Doug McDermott.
I mean, I love to shoot. I love to play fast. I mean, I love to cut. So that's kind of all we do here. So it's a perfect system, and everyone's always moving. So it's one of those deals where you can't really be wrong. As long as if you're standing, you're probably doing something wrong. So just continue to constantly move and put pressure on the defense.
And as for his role for the team, this is what was important to me, and a lot of people were throwing around the name Jay Crowder. Jerry Reynolds and I talked about that situation a lot in depth on Tuesdays. By the way, Jerry will be here tomorrow. Looking forward to that. But, Jay, you need to have minutes for that guy. He showed in Milwaukee last year, if he didn't have minutes, he wasn't necessarily going to be happy. And if I look at what Doug does versus what Jay does, I think Doug, while different players, meshes a little bit better with this Kings team. And I don't think you would have gotten this answer out of Jay Crowder. Maybe I'm wrong, but here's what Doug had to say about his role.
It's one of those systems where they want to shoot a lot of threes. They want to play fast, like I said, and that's my game. So I feel like I can't make a lot of mistakes out there as long as I'm aggressive. Making the defense work for things and providing space for some of these superstars. That's kind of what my role has been in the NBA, and I love being a part of it here.
Refreshing, right? Really refreshing. And a guy that actually has some solid respect for Sacramento. This really took me back. Doug, remember, he worked out for the Kings, but ultimately, I believe it was it was Ben McLemore that was drafted in front of Doug. So Doug reminisced a little bit about that process of working out with the Kings back in his draft days, but he threw some major love. He earned some major Kings points with me. Let's see if he earns them with you as well.
Big fan of the organization. I mean, I kind of miss playing, at that old arena, with the In-N-Out Burger next to it. But this new arena has been awesome. The fans have been great, and it's a special place to play.
The old arena with the In-N-Out Burger next to it. How great is that? So that's kind of your summary from the last few days from the Kings facility. What's going on? Coach Brown laid out what the practice schedule is going to look like. And before we know it, we're here. It is the start of the regular season. Now, to Lid's question, is Kevin starting or coming off the bench on opening night? My guess is Kevin is definitely coming off the bench if he is available to come off the bench. So the Kings do this thing. I forget what it's called, but basically the guys that are coming back from injuries that are going on that, you don't want to call it a journey, whatever the path is to get back to scrimmaging live with the team and then ultimately get back to playing in games, they will play some early 5-on-5, and that can include guys that aren't getting a ton of run in practice. So Kevin has been scrimmaging 5-on-5 with those guys as he did today. I don't know yet because I haven't heard anything from practice. But no, I do not think that Kevin will be starting. In fact, I would be very surprised if Kevin starts opening night. Baby Cakes, what's up? Doug replaced Sasha debacle. Yeah, right? A lot of people saying that same number, same type of player. We talked about that on Friday. Kevin is our starter. Okay, You guys are so funny. And I'm not saying you, Kevin. I'm not saying you, Lydia, but the Kings fan base as a whole. Because you all wanted Kevin Herter's head on a stick last year. You wanted him out of the starting lineup. All offseason, it's like Keon Ellis this, Keon Ellis that. And I love Keon. I think Keon's great. I think Keon had a bad preseason, by the way. But it's funny how it's either hot or cold sometimes. Not necessarily in this chat, but as a fan base overall. You either love them or you hate them and you want them out. But there is something to this with Kevin. Coach Brown has been very loyal to Kevin Huerter. Very loyal. In fact, when he struggled last year and was a little bit dinged up, I know he came off the bench a couple times, right? But for the most part, Kevin remained in the starting lineup. So I would not be surprised to see Kevin in the starting lineup at some point, but as I'm hearing right now, it's Keon's job. So we'll see what happens. That can certainly change. I don't think Keon's going to play his way out of the starting lineup, because here's the other thing too. Don't you kind of need Kevin Huerter a little bit more in that second unit? You do, simply because how many people right now can play a 3 position? Doug McDermott. It's not Alex Len. Keegan Murray. DeMar DeRozan. 3-4, I should say. Trey Lyles. We're not even talking about injuries. What if there's foul trouble? You got plenty of options at that 1-2 position. Plenty of options. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. That's why Coach Brown gets paid the big bucks. But if you take anything away from this, you should be walking away with an understanding that what you saw in the preseason from the Kings offensively, they were handcuffed. And I don't mean that in a negative term. Coach Brown wanted them to get as much time working the most difficult part of their game sometimes. It's really easy to go ISO. It's really easy to run your best play. But to keep grinding through the looks, through the cuts, not only for getting a little bit more experience at it, but the cardio of it too. To always be active. That really struck me with Doug's comments, talking about always moving, always making space for the other guys. You know, I think that it's going to be a problem if the Kings get stagnant. It was a problem last year. Now, I understand we have an explanation on why it looks stagnant this preseason, but if we're starting to see that same stuff in the regular season, that's not going to work well for this team. And I suspect, again, I go back to the shooting chart from the first half of the opening preseason game against the Warriors. I think you're going to see a lot more of that. And when I talk about the things the Kings were focused on in the preseason, it was the offensive rebounding, your crash zones. It was the pace. Against the Jazz, they shot 105 shots. So pace was good. Offensive rebounding was good. Turnovers, for the most part, when the starters played, were low. Now, you had the Blazers game, and then you also had the Clippers game where the starters turned it over 9 times in the first quarter, but you were without Malik Monk. You were without De'Aaron Fox for those games. So really encouraging for me to hear Coach Brown step forward and say that. It really blew my mind. If you were watching on Friday, my mind was blown at the end of the show. Completely blown. All right, let's get back to your chats, and then we're going to get out. Grant and I are going to be back here at 4 o'clock. Hopefully you can join us again. Baby Cakes. See, I told you Friday, man. It's like I'm worried my wife's going to come out like, Baby Cakes. Who you talking to? Jake from State Farm. Anyways, McNair better avoid Levine. Fools. Oh, dude. I went over it Friday. I watched the Bulls game on Thursday night. Levine, if Halliburton and Fox didn't work, Levine and Fox for sure is not working. They're not going there. They're not going there. Yes. Have you heard Baby Cakes? Do you hear the ending to the show? That's part of my outro. Light the damn beam. Stay the hell away from Levine. Let's see. Bane, genius move. Wait, you just moved. Chat's going fast. I like it. Let's see. Genius move by Mikey B. Surprised more teams don't do this. Yeah. He basically said this was our biggest problem last year, and I'm going to make it your biggest problem again during preseason. Intentionally. Work through it. You ever potty trained a child? Have you heard of the method where you just take a diaper off them and you just let them walk around the house and they got to figure it out? If you're a parent, have you ever just sent your kid to the room and said, if you're going to cry, you're going to cry. I'm sorry. You're going to have to cry yourself to sleep. Kind of what Coach Brown did with the offense. And on top of that, think about how many minutes were played by guys that aren't on this roster anymore. Think about how many of the second halves that were occupied by guys that, if they are on this roster, they're either going to be in Stockton or they're going to be at the end of the bench. A ton. Now, we can have the discussions like we did last week about Colby Jones and those guys, people that might be regressing a little bit. But at the end of the day, those players are not going to impact this season. That's a more long-term discussion about whether somebody is going to pan in or pan out. And if Colby Jones's development is so important to where if he does not develop, this team is not going to be successful, then this team's got a huge problem. So a lot to be positive about for sure. Let's see. James, we'll see what this team is. All fans base has fair weather fans. Yes, they do. Yes, they do indeed. Dennis, he can slide to the small forward. I think so too. And Kevin, by the way, his shoulders a little bit broader. Now, you expect that with a shoulder injury because you're doing a lot of rehab there. But I think it's good weight for him. Now, it's not a ton, but it's a little bit more than last year, and that'll help down low. That will for sure help. Dennis wants an oddball start. Wait, oddball stopper. You mean on-ball stopper. Dennis, in your talk to chat, my man. Dennis. Yes, spacing needed by Kevin. Agreed. A lot of good stuff. So I thought that would cheer you up a little bit, Kings fans. That audio from Mike Brown definitely put things into perspective for me. And I already was not panicking. I was not. And I was encouraging all of you not to panic either. But that definitely makes it a little bit better. Hey, we're going to be back. Grant and I, we're back at 4:00. And we're talking Kings. We're talking, we didn't even get to baseball today. You've got the World Series set. Got the Dodgers and the Yankees. Got a lot more Niners to go over. You got Monday Night Football. You got 2 games tonight. So a lot going on. Grant and I will be back right here in just about an hour. Do me a favor. Please, if you wouldn't mind, give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the show. Like the show if you are watching on X. We've had 185 that have popped in at some point via the 5 different platforms and channels that we stream to. But it helps us with the algorithm. We are already, because of you, Kings, anybody that pays attention to X on game nights, whenever X creates Kings versus whoever they're playing, our videos, when we go live, generate to that same thread because of all of you. So it's a like, it's those things that keep us there, and make sure that you subscribe to. And we are so appreciative of it as well. We've got our new merch too that's going to be dropping this week. We're excited to show that. So make sure you subscribe. All of the content is right there for you. And we will be doing our pregame, halftime, and postgame shows every game this year. Jerry Reynolds going to be joining us again this season at halftime. Really looking forward to that indeed. So Grant and Ryan, 4 o'clock. Hopefully you can join us. Good show today. Good calls. Great stuff in the chat. Appreciate everybody that's shown up today. And by the way, don't forget Jerry Reynolds tomorrow, 2 o'clock, right here on the King's Court. It is Jerry Reynolds Tuesday. But before that, Grant and Ryan, Grant and me, I feel weird saying Grant and Ryan, but Grant and me, back with you 4 o'clock. We're taking your calls, open phone lines, whatever you want to talk about, and certainly getting you ready for a big week here in Sacramento. Opening night, Thursday night for your Kings. Go Kings! Light the damn beam. Baby cakes, stay the hell away from Levine. Court is dismissed.